Okay, the first item on the agenda is shared dispatching between police and fire. Unless there are others you think would take less time, because this one will take more time. Chief, would that be a big problem for you, or?
No, it's not a problem. It's really up.
You in a hurry, Chief Susie?
At this point, it doesn't.
Don't ask him that. He's a fireman, he's always in a hurry.
I'll leave it up to the manager. Which one do we wish to discuss first? Nobody can make a decision.
Go in order. Take them in order. Go in order.
Okay, shared dispatching between police and fire.
I'll just start off by reading the memo, that way everybody at home is aware as well. One of the topics brought up in the budget season was to share dispatching for police and fire. First, it should be noted that the fire department does not currently dispatch. 911 calls for medical emergencies go to Penobscot or Holton, depending upon how the call is made, cell phone or landline. They dispatch to our department, who responds to the call. The dispatcher in Holton or Penobscot may patch us into the call so the responding crew can be informed of what exactly is going on when they get there. The dispatch call could come into the police department, which would then inform the crew on duty and have them respond that way. The police department can already do this, and they do this when there's nobody in the fire station. If the fire department were to dispatch for the police department, there are several things that would have to be completed before this could happen. That includes, in no particular order, training for all fire ambulance members to dispatch at police standards. That's 80 hours worth of training. Remodeling of the fire department dispatch station to make it secure and up to the current FBI CGIS standards. Terminal agreements between the departments, and all terminals would have to be moved up to the fire station, which would have a cost with that as well. We could possibly eliminate 3 police positions under this scenario. That would save $166,722 the first year. However, with that, we would lose our jail. We would also have to haul our prisoners down to Holton, which would add costs of approximately $30,600. There's more information on that on the following pages. We would also lose the ability of people to walk into the police station and talk to a police officer. There are some stats on the following pages as to the number of walk-ins that we received in a typical month. That information was gathered when we explored a joint dispatch with Presque Isle. In December, when the council voted to put the police officer position in the budget that was proposed to be cut, it seemed the council did not want a reduction in the level of services at the police department. If we did this, it would certainly reduce service levels. There's quite a bit of information that the chiefs have compiled and can either go through or answer any questions that the council might have on that.
And it might be easier to answer questions versus me going through all of this material that I've already provided.
So if fire calls, okay, so 911 calls go to Holton or Penobscot County. Is it possible for police calls to go there too?
No, that's just a 911 emergency that transfers that call to the agency that needs to be sent to.
So right now,
So you do end up with the call?
Correct.
we end up with the dispatcher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or
You
they,
do all
or
five.
they transfer the call. Well, those calls that come in from 911. Remember though, a lot of people still call us direct because they're still familiar with their local police department.
They still have those stickers in their house that have emergency lines that were given out.
So,
That works good.
So, Chief, what's out of the downside? What's the downside to doing this? I mean, as far as the people walk in, now, if we didn't dispatch here, you'd still be here during the day, right?
well,
Most of the time? And you have a secretary, right?
I have an administrative assistant that does her own little, works on the grants and does the reports for some of the officers and keeps things flowing.
But could take down a question and a number for somebody to get back to somebody?
I suppose anybody could walk in and give that message that we would have to have a police officer come back and take that call. Right now, when people come in, they talk to a police officer. That police officer may take care of that issue within 10 minutes, and then they're out back on the road. Now we're talking about having somebody come back off the road and taking that, it may be 20 minutes, maybe half an hour.
Could be done by phone, could it not?
Usually not. We handle some calls by phone just because we have officers that take the calls, but it's because they want to talk to the police officer. But if the officer's in the middle of something, can't take the call. why it doesn't work anywhere else. I don't know of any department that just sends it right to a phone. There's always somebody that, okay. One of the things that, when I put this together for the metro requirement, we talked to the security people that will put this all together, they said they don't know of any place in the state of Maine where fire answer calls for police. It's always police answering calls because of all the requirements. All the safety requirements, all the background, all the training. It's nowhere in the state of Maine that firemen are answering police calls.
Okay, so what if, what if the police department was up there with you guys, with them guys, huh?
Totally different scenario, yeah. And I think that's, in our 10-year comprehensive plan, is to join, which we should have done 25 years ago, when that option was, when they built the new fire station, then the city ought not to join with that.
But could the EOC or something be remodeled to house the police department?
I don't believe so. I don't believe that complex is big enough yet to house the police.
Both floors?
No.
Mr. McDonough?
I have a question about, when we talk about dispatching, our primary source of dispatching is the 911 system, correct?
The primary source for individuals to have emergency calls is the 911 system.
Okay, all right, yeah. So anybody that calls 911, they get a hold of somebody in either Penobscot or Holton, all right, and they contact the appropriate agency.
And that's just a transfer.
Right, and
So
that's
that's
just a
just having
transfer.
somebody there to transfer the call to somebody else to take that complaint or.
So
that
that's
call.
not what we would consider a true dispatch center.
No.
Okay, thank you. And then, if a fire person were to be doing police dispatching, is the extent of the background check that a fire person would get any different than what a dispatcher for the police department would
Sure,
get? Okay.
it's,
So they would,
fire departments is only a minimum.
right, they just do a criminal background on them, but you
Correct.
gotta go the in-depth fingerprints, the
Correct.
whole works? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Plus the training just on the metro system
Right,
itself.
and then the annual
Correct.
ancillary training
And
that goes
even
with
when
it.
you do all of that, it still has to have law enforcement oversight for your dispatch area.
Right.
So it still has to have law enforcement somewhere to have oversight, because you're dealing with law enforcement issues.
On site or?
It doesn't have to be on site, but it has to be an oversight of that.
This 80 hours, is that done or do you have to recertify?
Oh, yes, we have to.
How often?
Every 2 years.
How many hours?
Well, it depends on if you have a full certification. I have to recertify full certification every 4 years, and you can do online every 2 years at 8 hours.
And Mr. Fire Chief Susi, would that be a problem for your firemen to be dispatching?
Right now, the PD dispatches for us. We empty the station and they take over our phones already. We don't have the manpower to have somebody sitting there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because if you have an officer on the road, now you gotta keep people up all night. So I'd probably have to bring somebody in or pick up a slot just to answer phones and take care of stuff all night long.
So how often are you, so every once in a while, there's nobody at that building?
This winter more than not, just
That-
about every time there's a car accident.
That's often?
Yeah. And right now it's one button. PD will take over our phones until someone gets in on call.
And for us, for law enforcement, it's not just answering phone, but it's also listening to the radio traffic, because we're interacting with what's going on, not only in our agencies, but what's going around us in the Border Patrol, Presque Isle, Washburn, Sheriff's Department, State Police. All of that is being monitored. So it's not just like putting somebody in listen just for the phone. It's all inclusive of what we're doing now.
And if we were to do a new police station, Are you saying that we do a new fire station at the same time?
I think that the concept would be a new public safety building. Include both. So you'd get the bang for your buck for having police officers there to dispatch or whatever, to do both. It surely, for us, answering phones and doing what we do at the police is not encumbersome as what they have to do when they go on a medical run. But it is what we have to do to keep things flowing.
I found a place in Wisconsin that the workers were police, fire, and
Yeah, that's a concept out there of having fire, police, and medics all riding around, and I don't know if that, I don't know what job you're.
I don't know how many
doing
places
when
that
something
happens.
Yeah.
There are some though.
Something
I
has to
did
suffer.
too. You mentioned this, someone mentioned it before. I
Mo-
found a couple. but it's
Mostly big agencies that talk with thousands of people that are having somebody running around doing police work with an ambulance. I think New York has tech groups that do that also.
Anybody else?
Would there be any cost savings to maybe the midnight shift or whatever to have a reservist? Are they trained in,
No,
they would have to go through the same training?
anybody that works on or has to work on our metro system, all has to have that same
That-
level of
And
training.
the reservists don't have that. And would you care if we lost our jail?
I would care, I think.
Okay.
It is the only other jail besides the county jail.
Right, I know, and I'm just wondering if this is something that you'd want to see kept, or
Well,
would
it
you?
is, because we have the Superior Court here and District Court here, we end up holding their prisoners. There is no
Right.
jail at
Right.
the courthouse. So
Courthouse, yeah.
we end up being.
It's here or Holton,
and-
Holton,
and
yeah,
it's-
okay,
And if you've all read about what's going on at the county jails,
yeah,
it's,
I know.
and I've had conversations with the sheriff about the same issue.
I had the opportunity to listen to the new sheriff speak at one of my retired functions, and right now, I think they're probably about close to $2 million behind the power curve, I think, as far as the budget is concerned.
Aroostook County Jail is $900,000
Okay,
behind.
900, well, he
The
was
whole jail system.
the whole
is
jail
2.5.
system. And I asked him the question, if it were to revert back to county operation, county billing, and so on and so forth, taxation and so on and so forth, he said, if you think that the taxpayers are upset now with what the municipalities are doing, he said, if it comes back to us, wait and see what happens. It would be quite a large increase in the county tax to start supporting the jails again. That's just a side comment, just so people would be
Are
aware.
you saying that of the 2.5 statewide, 900,000 is in Aroostook?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, why is it so, we got 10% of the less than 10% of the population?
50% of the crime.
50% of the land mass.
Lots of places to hide.
Any other questions on, so in your opinion, this is not feasible at this
At
point?
this point, I don't believe it is. I think when we look at our 10-year plan, I think that maybe when we incorporate some new ideas. Nobody knows what revenue sharing is doing, and it's only frying us more and more. One of our documents there just showed on our sex abuse cases that we're handling now, it's almost 4 times what we did 5 years ago, because we're being mandated to investigate more of these where the state used to do it.
You think there's more reporting too because of all the
Oh,
awareness?
there's definitely more reporting, just like anytime you have more reporting, you have more crime, but it is what we're passing on. We're fortunate, I don't have a detective. We have more than a 70% clearance rate because we all work together. It's a unit that works together, they work well.
Yeah, somewhere in here, there was a cost of what it would cost to revamp at the fire department. That would be kind of, as you mentioned, kind of,
Yeah,
with the committee being formed to look into a new facility.
Yeah, that cost is just to move, just the Metro computer was $15,000. Just that one computer, not talking about radios. And we all know, when you start moving old machinery out, you end up losing something, or you're gonna have to buy something new.
I was just under the assumption that there was always someone at the fire station.
We just don't have the staff for that.
So you put a closed sign on the door, or?
We don't,
No?
the building's secured, so they can get into the lobby if someone walks in. But if we all have to run out for a car accident, or there's more than one ambulance call at a time and a car accident, you might have a matter of time where there's nobody standing in the building.
Or there may not be somebody that's up. They may be, just got back from a run and they're doing an hour of sleeping and getting ready for the next run. So our department's up all the time. We're 24/7. So that when somebody comes in to our lobby, there is somebody there, a police officer there to talk to them. We tried in the past civilian dispatchers. It didn't work. We had multiple issues. Luckily, we didn't have legal issues, but in my years, I found that this works the best. It keeps all the officers involved, keeps everybody trained in how to run the Metro system. We're inspected twice a year. We're inspected twice a year for the jails, and we passed all of those inspections.
And with the jail, in your opinion, are we receiving fair market value for the use of that jail?
We just increased our rate again, and it is a matter of keeping a balance of how much it would cost for them to send somebody to Holton versus bringing them to us. So it is a fair at this point.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we don't collect on is warrants, and it's hard to, if, let's say, Fort Fairfield picked up a warrant, an individual on a warrant that was out of Portland. It wouldn't be fair for us to charge Fort Fairfield to house that individual for a warrant that came out of Portland. We do charge them for the meals, though. So we do recoup what it costs us for the meals.
From Portland or from Fort Fairfield?
Fort Fairfield,
And Portland pays nothing?
correct. Just like if they picked up somebody down there, they're not charging us up
Yeah,
here.
our people don't
Right.
act like that.
Oh,
Remember the 50%?
You're right, Mr. Martin, they don't. That's why we.
Any other questions on this issue?
Just a statement. I think I think having an officer there is a safety issue too. I don't think that in today's day and age, that's a place for a civilian. I think it should be an officer.
Well, when it comes time to try to get a new public safety building approved, that'd be a good selling point as far as
Absolutely.
Yep.
operational savings and so forth. Okay, item number 2.
Another topic that was brought up was utilizing basic EMTs instead of having all paramedics on staff. That would be possible. We have a breakdown of the wage differences. The difference is $141.02 per week is what we could save on a weekly basis from having a paramedic to having a basic EMT. So that's $7,332.04 a year. If we were to replace 3 paramedics with basics, we could save just under $22,000. We moved that to 6 paramedics and 6 basics. That put 2 basics on each crew with 3 paramedics, and save potentially just under $44,000. However, if we switch to only having 3 paramedics on a crew, we cannot guarantee there would always be a paramedic available to go on call. That would require us to drop down our ambulance license department-wide from ALS to BLS. Because ALS calls are paid at a higher rate than BLS, dropping the basic level would mean we would lose $96 per local emergency call. We do about 1,280 local emergency calls a year, which means a loss of revenue of $122,880. Dropping down the basic level would also mean we could not do ALS transfers. 2014, the ALS transfers we did add up to $569,563. So switching to 6 basics would save just about $44,000, but would result in a loss of $692,000. If we were to switch to 3 basics, it would only be a handful of ALS transfers that, if we switched to 3 basics and we were forced to turn over ALS transfers because of a lack of paramedics, it would only take 5 or 6 turned over transfers to make up the loss of the revenues or the expenses that we would save there. So really, it doesn't make a lot of financial sense to drop from 3 basics or drop down to 3 basics on the cruise.
We're given right now, based on how our licensing, which is you send an intermediate and a paramedic out on each call.
A paramedic, and right now it's 2 paramedics. But I can use volunteers.
You can mix them.
I can.
Okay.
I have that ability right now, as long as I have paramedics on staff.
Right. So if you're in, how many paramedics do you normally have on shift? Okay.
1 shift has 4.
And how many in the lower echelons?
They're all basic.
They're all basic. And what is our license at?
We're at an ALS license.
Which is, yeah, but what's that for staffing?
We have the minimum of ALS on every truck that rolls out, so we keep our license at an intermediate.
So which is a minimum of 1 paramedic and
A person.
a person?
Yeah.
Well, at the basic levels, to provide care.
Right, a
And
license,
certified?
yeah.
Okay, thank you. So what about if you go up and get somebody that just had a hip replacement at the hospital and bring them back to the nursing home for rehabilitation? There's no care required
But because we're
at the paramedic level, correct?
correct.
So if you had the traffic there and you didn't have the support, you could use a couple of basic EMTs to do that?
Not right now. Our trucks are licensed at an ALS level.
So then you have
We
to,
get paid-
you have to be staffed at the level that we're licensed, right? Okay, that's where I was going with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, yeah.
All right.
If we were to staff at 2 basics, we'd have to drop our federal license, or our state licensing.
Right.
To
And
a
then,
basic.
and then the quality of care would drop in conjunction with that, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what's the requirement for the ALS?
Intermediate or above.
Both?
No, at least an intermediate, so I can send an intermediate and a basic out on a truck, or
Well, where's intermediate? I mean, paramedic is what? That's the top?
Yeah.
And so you have intermediates between basic EMT and paramedics?
or they're advanced life support now, they're ALS.
Advanced-
Or, they're not, they're advanced, advanced EMTs.
No, first of all, we wouldn't want to replace anybody. But I mean, if it comes to new hires, this would be my position.
One thing I'd like to say about all this is it's just being on the board, the education board at NM, we have no paramedics in school. It's very hard to find paramedics looking for work out there. A neighboring ambulance service has gone down to just getting drivers because there are no paramedics out there.
How come?
Because you either want to be a paramedic or you don't. Nursing school is a half a year less and you make twice as much money. And you save a half a year. So I can go become a paramedic in 2.5 years and get a degree at NM, or I can go 2 years and get a degree in nursing and make more money. So you either want to do it or you don't.
You're not going to get a degree in nursing in 2 years.
Sure. Yeah, you are.
Casey, how come it's taking you forever?
I'm getting my bachelor's degree as opposed to my associate's degree, so I can earn more and provide better care.
So you're gonna be a registered nurse when you graduate, whereas a 2-year person is an LPN?
I'll also be a
nurse.
registered nurse, but I'll have a bachelor's degree to back that up.
It allows you upward mobility later on as well.
Okay, well,
Yep.
I know, like, when my mother went to school, it was 4 years to be a registered nurse.
Getting ready to put Emily through, so it's
Right.
4 years to.
All right.
So what you're saying is you might have to end up doing this,
That's
whether
right.
you want to or not.
So through attrition alone, it may happen, and then we'll be paying for that person to go
So-
on to school.
So what you're saying is, if we lose a paramedic and we hire a basic, and then we lose another paramedic and need one, we might not have one. So you want to hire a paramedic every time you
If
can
I
get
can,
one?
Mr. Martin, yes, that's the way I'd like to go.
I mean, if that trend goes in that direction,
Pay's
if I-
gonna
if I
have to
heard-
go
well,
up.
if I heard you right, you would end up having to drop your license,
Right.
because you wouldn't have the amount of paramedics, right?
Down the road, that's a distinct possibility. We're very fortunate to have the young people we have that stay around town. We keep them there, and we work very hard at keeping them, in firefighting's different. You know, their job changes a little bit, so we train not only, good firefighters, we have really good people becoming paramedics. And, that's great for the citizens of Caribou. That doesn't happen everywhere. We're very fortunate.
So far, we're very fortunate, and we haven't saved a dime.
I think that goes to show how good of an operation we
Well,
have.
I know that, I know that, I realize that.
This
Any-
might sound like a dumb question, but can you hire a nurse?
Good, you're gonna pay them.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, if it got to the point where
I'd
they
love to
were,
have one, just to take care of our flight
Yeah.
service. I'd love to, but,
you have to pay them.
yeah,
But if push came to shove and there were no more paramedics,
nurses
and-
just can't do what we can do in the field.
right,
When I started teaching 40
Don't go any further, that's good.
plus years ago, a nurse and a teacher made about the same amount of money. What happened?
shortages.
People are living longer.
You went the wrong career
Yeah.
path.
I went the wrong way. Anything else on this issue, then? Okay, Cary Medical Center. What's the deal with Cary?
Another topic discussed at the budget meetings was to see if Cary Medical Center would pay a fee for service to the city. As they're a department of the city, they're not a nonprofit as the other organizations that have fee-for-service agreements with the city. The last joint Cary Council meeting was discussed that the hospital board, which the council appoints, is charged with overseeing the operations. The hospital district owns and is responsible for the grounds and the buildings. Council discussed a fee-for-service concept at the meeting. However, there was no resolution to that. If the council wishes to ask Cary to enter into a similar type of agreement, I'd recommend a letter to be sent to the board of directors for them to consider at their next meeting.
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
if that were to happen, how would the fee for services be assessed? Would they be assessed the same way that we do the other nonprofits?
They're not a nonprofit, he said.
I know, but how do we establish?
If the council wanted to keep the rules generally similar, it could be 2%, which is what we have with the nonprofits. They are a department of the city, so there's differences there. If the council wanted to go for a different ratio, I think there's leeway there.
So
The
the-
council can ask for whatever the council.
There's no precedence out there then, is there?
Correct. They are a department of the city. Just like at the end of the year, everybody hopes that, the various departments can turn back a little bit of money or,
Right.
at least not go over. That's where that question is coming to. There is no precedence for this type of thing. We are one of just a few hospitals around the nation, actually, that are not municipally owned.
So if the governor's budget were to pass, we couldn't tax them then?
No. Heinz Health Services is a nonprofit, which we could tax them. But Cary Medical Center is a department of the city.
Well, I don't see
Now-
anything wrong in asking.
If I remember correctly, wasn't there a discussion about that they have the ability to tax?
If it were to come
Us?
down to it, yes.
Okay,
To operate the hospital.
okay.
All right.
So if we tax them, they could turn around and tax
Now,
us. Or-
there's more, I think there's more to that animal than really meets the eye right now. And maybe, depending on what happens in the future, that might be a topic of discussion. But I was satisfied with the answers that we got the last time, at the time, I'm sure that we don't necessarily have to close the door on that situation, but I think we probably ought to wait and see what the state dictates, what we're gonna do, and then maybe think about it again. It's my own personal opinion.
Well, we'll know what the state's going to do by the end of June. Yeah, they have to be done. They have to adjourn. Oh, they can call themselves back.
They can go back in.
But anyway,
Because they do a lot for the community in what they, were you there at that meeting?
No.
Probably not.
I wasn't, so I
They
can't
do a
speak.
lot for the community in what they,
A lot of those agencies do a lot for
Yeah.
the community, okay?
Did they quantify that at all? Just curious. Did they quantify that?
I believe that when we left the meeting, they were going to get a supporting document.
Yeah,
for
right.
But I have not seen
Right.
that.
Curious. I think she was gonna put some stuff together because of what she does for the fire department and veterans organizations and so on and so forth. So plus whatever else they do, you know, for all their other fundraisers.
What do they do
and
for the
stuff,
fire
too, so
department?
They're a strong participant in the community.
I don't wanna put you on the spot.
You're not, but our nurses that we fly with, one of that is, they come from Cary,
And are paid by Cary?
yes.
Really?
And Cary doesn't charge for the flight.
I guess that's worth, something.
Where's the wallet?
They take care of all of our, we take care of our infection control as well as they do. They follow us just like we're kind of part of them, so they approve our shot records. Everything that we do, we go through them because we're all healthcare workers out in the field, so it's almost even worse a little sometimes, but they make sure we're good with everything. We don't give anything for that. We might feed somebody.
Any consensus on anything here then?
I-
We don't wanna ask?
I think maybe you can probably just check with Chris and see if she can provide you with that information for future reference, but
I wouldn't,
I'm not overly concerned at this time.
no.
Unless you want the money.
Okay, building permit fees. So we're gonna end up losing money on this deal, cause I favor reducing the fees.
I do as well.
And I like the idea of going by square footage instead of, or by something other than, what's it gonna cost you to build that? Because they're gonna lowball you, and they're gonna be surprised that it's even higher than their high estimate, so. but-
It's only gonna be lowball until it's assessed though, correct?
Right.
Yeah, but that could take a while.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but do you change the building fee permit? No. Okay.
Yeah, but I think you could better, more accurately, we know, based on trends over the past 5 or 10 years, we know what a cost per square foot is. I mean, you can put that, you can dial that in pretty close, I would think.
No, but you get a shed as opposed to a barn, as opposed to this, as to I'm hiring a contractor, as to I'm doing it myself. There's a lot of variables.
Granite doghouse.
Big box.
You been in my backyard?
Just saying, Phil.
I'm gonna have to cover that.
So do you want to talk on this issue?
I think the council's kind of summed it up. It was discussed previously, so it's being brought up again tonight.
Good. I do have some legitimate questions in respect to that. When you talk about square foot and what our permit fees currently are and stuff like that. One of the things that I didn't see in here was some examples of what other communities are assessing for their permit fees. That would have been a little bit more beneficial to sway me to maybe, go one way or the other.
Right, there was not a lot of, honestly, there was not a lot of effort put into this proposal. There's a lot of work that would have to go into anything. So it was brought up to see if council wanted, if this is a topic the council wanted to look at. I could see if we're gonna talk about switching to a square footage, which nobody in the county, I don't believe anybody in the state does it that way. We'd have to go back and look at building permits that have been issued over the last year, 2 or 3, try and devise a schedule that would, keep the fees somewhat close to where they're at today, or if council wanted to see them lower or higher. There's a lot of work and analysis that would have to go into presenting a real proposal to the council on this topic.
The problem I have with our building permit fees is, it's like when you went to college and they said it cost a lot less than it does now, but it costs X amount of dollars to go to college, right? And then they got a list of about 25 items, your computer fee, your athletic fee, your blah, 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 blah. I mean, I built a long time ago, and why don't you have a fee, Because you got the basic permit, then you got the plumbing permit, then the electrical permit, then the
Well, we don't have electrical permits.
sewer permit, then well, that's part of the plumbing, I guess.
Right. But no, there are a lot of permits like that you would need when you're building a house or whatever. And that's something we could look into as well. Plumbing permits, I would be hesitant on lumping those in with building permits, just because people can add fixtures here and there. The requirements that are handed down by the state on that are a little more intricate than what a typical building permit would be.
So they're gonna charge you by, so if you get 2 bathrooms, you pay a bigger permit than 1 bathroom when you're building?
You pay a minimum of $40, and then it's on a per faucet basis. Or per, not per faucet, per fixture.
It's $10 a fixture, $40 minimum, but the state is gonna take 25% of that, so it's hard to lump that in together, because
Right.
they've gotta get their cut on everything.
Tell them we'll send them their cut when they send us our revenue share.
And we pay the plumbing inspector.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, see, so that's one of those ones that's tough to do.
But it would, generally speaking, it would be good if we could reduce those, encourage people to, first of all, get a permit,
Yeah.
because some of it gets by you until there's another revow.
Right?
I mean,
In the demolition permits, how many of those do we issue roughly?
I
I think we had maybe 3.
was gonna say 3 or 4 in
Yeah,
2014.
but we had a lot more buildings than that torn down, but we would like to encourage people to come in to
I mean,
get that.
for
so
$75, you could almost eliminate that and at least have the people come in for the permit.
Right.
I mean, that's,
Because the biggest thing with getting demolition permits is, at least then the assessing office knows that that building no longer exists, and then you're not being taxed on it anymore. If they don't know, it's possible that it could get slipped.
And then if there are any environmental issues, they can be,
Right.
spoke about at that time also.
Right.
So,
yeah, a lot more were torn down though than you gave out permits for.
Yes.
So,
And Dave Willett, who was the building inspector, noticed a lot of things, and he would call and say, did they have a demo permit? And I would say no, and he'd say, well, make sure that you go inspect it, at least from the assessing point of view. But we would like to, just like
Should have issued them one after the fact.
Dennis said, we'd like to get someone out there to look at the environmental implications of taking down a structure.
but if they take it down without a permit, keep taxing them on it.
And then it ends up in front of the Board of Assessors, and they say, you should have known that that was down because you drive by there twice a week. I mean, I hear it all the time. I heard it this week.
So what's the point of a demolition permit then? So that you know someone's taking something down? That's it?
And
And to make sure,
environmental.
like, all the DEP requirements are being met if there's asbestos.
So why don't we have it for free?
yeah, for 3 permits, that's what I'm saying, for $75 a year.
Have it free, so that then we'll,
Or
At
can
least
you
know
bill them
about it.
after the fact?
yes.
It still doesn't solve the problem of someone not getting a permit though, even though it's
well,
free.
it would if we did it like, if you get a permit, if it's free. If you don't, then we're gonna charge you.
I think the thing is that people just do
Don't
it because they
know.
don't think they don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know. That's part of the process, and then when you look at them and say, you didn't get a permit, well, no. Well, take for example, John Jones tears his house down and buries it. Okay, well, in the ordinance, within the compact urban line, you can't bury stuff on your property that has this, that, and the other thing, okay, as an example. It has to be hauled off and taken to the dump. And if there's a potential for something in there, the building that was constructed before such and such, then no, you can't even bury it on that property, all that stuff. Even though you went through and replaced all the woodwork and there's no lead paint left in there, if it was built prior to this and so on and so forth, it has to go there anyway.
So it sounds like the council wants to see a little more in-depth analysis on this.
But don't stop your trying to get new business to spend full time on this, okay?
I'll do this while I'm up at about 3 a.m.
I saw your email come in at 10 o'clock last night, and I said, oh, he's just trying to impress us now.
I just think
Want to
new,
go to the weekend.
And I have one other question. Are the permits really a deterrent from building here, or is it ultimately the taxes? What is the deterrent?
You're gonna get a different answer depending upon who you ask.
I'm asking you. You're the permit issuing authority.
can I answer that question?
No, you're a building.
If I can.
No, go ahead.
No, From my standpoint, we're at a competitive disadvantage compared to Fort, Limestone, Connor, Washburn, because we have to follow MUBEC, which requires a whole bunch of construction codes that we have to follow that our neighboring communities that are smaller than us don't have to follow. I think that's one of the biggest things. Because of the different codes that we have to follow, we have to do the inspections as required under the code, which is why the building permit is
Based on what it's based on. right.
Exactly. Places like Limestone or Connor, Limestone, for example, it's a flat fee of, I don't know right now, $25, $50,
Yeah,
right?
Not much.
So the state has put us at a competitive disadvantage, which the state seems to do quite well. I don't think it's a building permit issue completely. Some people will say that it is, some people will say it's a taxation issue.
But now you brought up another question that I was gonna ask. Why do we have a uniform building code and it's not uniform? Wouldn't that be a nice question to be asking our legislators? Rather than to put everybody at a disadvantage because of the smaller communities with the lesser population? I thought we were looking at consistency in building practices. Didn't make any difference where they built the house. And that's what's happening now.
Right. The unfunded mandate that is MUBEC, handed down by the state,
Yes.
I've discussed several times with our delegation, neither of which have authored legislation or, to my knowledge, signed on in support of legislation to repeal that or modify it or make it uniform. It's possible that somebody has signed on to support something I'm not aware of, but
What about our lobbyists at MMMA?
this is one of their 6 or 7 big topics for the year that they're addressing.
What was
Yeah.
the reasoning by our legislators not to want to do that?
General reasoning that I got for any of the
Mandates?
unfunded mandate reductions was, one, they didn't think citizens would be in favor of getting rid of that mandate. Their committees could meet at the same time, could create conflicts for testimonies, those types of excuses.
Not reasons, right? Okay, I'm glad you used that term.
This doesn't, these fees do not delineate between residential or commercial or industrial construction. See, because the way, I mean, to answer that question, I don't think, if I'm gonna come and put up a garage for $25,000, I'm gonna spend $150 in a permit. $150 of a $25,000 investment, it's a drop in the bucket. To me, you're not gonna notice that. If I'm gonna go spend $5 million on a building, then I'm doing something industrial or I'm doing something commercial. Those are a little more important to me. Now I'm spending a whole lot more money. So, I just, this is, and I know I'm in the minority here. I think that code enforcement, this section of our budget is there's ways here, I think by looking at those different fees, you could structure it so that you could make this department whole.
It has been.
No, it hasn't.
Self-sufficient.
Self-sufficient,
Right.
yeah. And I guess maybe there's some more things to maybe look in there, but again, my point is, for $150, I'm not gonna blink twice at that.
Right.
Depends on who we're trying to,
Right. I mean, Porter is a great example. In 2014, with their building permit, we issued 52. We took in 18,366 in revenue. Porter was a large portion of that with their $1 million expansion here in Caribou. A couple of new houses are being built in Caribou, which was contributing to those numbers as well. But
but I mean, even in an expensive house, you're at $200,000, you're gonna spend $1,200 on a permit. To me, that's just small potatoes. When it comes down to a building permit, but that's just my opinion.
Don't say small potatoes.
That's a refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you,
That's a mortgage payment.
those are essential costs that go with
Yeah.
your living standard,
Yeah.
okay? And you should have to pay for it. And if it's a deterrent, and it's a big deterrent, then I think we probably need to address it and be a little bit more competitive, okay? But if it's not, and it doesn't sound like it is to me, I mean, I paid $50 for an extension on my garage, and I gave them all the correct figures. the $1,000 estimate for the groundwork, the $500 for the concrete work, I didn't, and the $10,000 in materials, so, I paid my fee, and it didn't bother me, because I wanted to get my garage done.
Sounds like you
Okay.
added 3 feet to his garage.
Excuse me?
Sounds like you added 3 feet to the length of your garage.
No, 12 by 22.
I mean, I'm not trying to make that sound like small. It's not. It is $1,200 is a lot of money, but if you compare it to the total cost of that project,
Yeah, it's 0.5%, 0.6%, yeah.
So is the goal from council to try and make code enforcement self-sustaining? Is it to lower the building permits to encourage more development? Is it to have a mix of different rates for residential versus commercial or industrial? Or do you want us to just compile all the information and bring it back at a?
What would you like to see in code enforcement? You wanna see what was there prior to you coming here, or do you wanna continue
It was
Doing it-
self-sufficient, wasn't it?
to,
Or were they
almost,
counting the housing to
They're
make
counting
it?
the
to make
counting the
that
housing
happen?
and stuff? So,
That's a very good question, one that I was going to bring up with the council in March.
we'll just leave that alone until March then, if that's all right with you, don't wanna spill the beans now?
Spoiler, don't.
Yeah, we'll throw the teaser out there.
All right, more to come then, right?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll accept that for an answer right now,
Call it trailer.
unless somebody else wants to go further, but I don't think they would, right now.
Anything else? Have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're done. Thank you.